Hi, I'm attorney Andrew Thompson. Today we're talking about the theory in litigation of what might be considered a party's best day in court. Let's look at four different possibilities. A civil litigant who's a plaintiff, the pursuer in litigation, the prosecutor in a criminal case, or a criminal defendant. Under the theory we're discussing, in a civil case, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about breach of contract, negligence, something involving family law such as a divorce settlement, or any other type of civil action, as long as money damages or a money settlement is involved in some way. On the plaintiff's side, the best day in court has to be evaluated carefully. From one perspective, the amount could be infinite, but realistically it's probably much less. The best way for a civil plaintiff to truly evaluate his or her best day in court is to eliminate the sort of lottery winning types of examples where millions of dollars may be on the table, and to consider what a judge or a jury is truly likely to award him or her on the day their trial is over. So, for example, it may be possible for a plaintiff to receive $1 million in a judgment, but realistically, when he goes to court and has to put on evidence in contrast to what the defendant presents, he may realistically have the opportunity to get $200,000 to $250,000, for example. On the defendant's side, his or her best day in court could be assumed to be walking away with no liability or no payment at all. But this usually isn't entirely realistic. If a case goes all the way to trial, it's very likely that the judge or jury will or could award the plaintiff something. And the risk of that something being very, very large may make it wise for the defendant to consider the reality that a zero-sum outcome is not really what they could expect from their best day in court. All of this is important because each side needs to also consider the cost it will take to achieve the result they truly hope to get. In other words, what's it going to cost to get to that best day in court? The criminal side works a little differently because there typically isn't money involved, or if there is, it's as a collateral matter to the central issue of guilt, innocence, jail time, and other penalties. But it's still wise for each side to consider what's most likely to be their best day in court. For the prosecution, usually, if not always, it's to obtain a conviction or a guilty verdict at trial. For the defendant, it's to obtain a dismissal or an acquittal at trial. Evaluating each side's best outcome is essential to negotiating any plea agreement that might be obtained between the parties. Again, however, the parties need to consider the costs involved. On the prosecution side, where the taxpayers are funding the litigation, those costs are different. The costs usually involve a consideration of weighing the cost of benefits of taking this particular case to trial versus the many, many other cases within a prosecutor's overall load that he'll have to choose between. On the defendant's side, it's a little different. The costs are mostly about money he has to spend with an attorney and perhaps expert witnesses, but there's also some extraordinary emotional cost involved in thinking through the process and waiting on a jury to make a decision about his or her guilt or innocence. Evaluating these outcomes can be difficult and challenging. You need the assistance of competent counsel to help. Please call the Thompson Law Office at 317-564-4976 for a free initial consultation today, or find us on the web at www.thompsonlaw-in.com.